The webinar today is hosted by Digistore. For those who don't know, Digistore is a solution supplier across a whole range of areas. Obviously animation, finishing, compositing, special effects, that's one of the things we're covering off today, but we provide solutions for a whole range of application areas, and there's just a few of them mentioned on the slide there. We integrate brands from the world's leading brands together into complete operating systems across single systems through to multi-studios and full broadcast facilities. There's just some of the brands that we represent, and we have direct relationships with those suppliers so that we can utilize their expertise to get the solution that you need. Specifically for Autodesk, why look at Digistore as your Autodesk solution supplier? First of all, and maybe foremost, we're renowned for our customer service. Digistore actually won Autodesk's Customer Satisfaction Award, awarded by Autodesk to its channel 2 years in a row. So thank you for those customers who rated us so highly, but that's one of the great reasons, our support and service for using Digistore for Autodesk. Unbeatable experience. We've been supplying these solutions using Autodesk products for the longest amount of time out of anyone on the channel. We sell the complete range of systems, obviously the animation products that we're talking about today, but Smoke Advanced, Flame Premium, and all of the creative finishing products. We operate Australia-wide with on-the-ground support in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. We provide training options, so if you are looking at buying software and hardware, it's great to talk to your salesperson about bundling training for that so that you can get up to speed quickly and look at those trading options. And we offer complete solutions across all platforms. So just briefly, that's why you should consider Digistore for your Autodesk solutions. There are a number of specials specifically for the applications that we're talking about today, which end on October 13th, October 18th, 2013. First and foremost, you can save 15% on 3D Studio Max Maya Creation Suites, all of Standard, Premium and Ultimate, or 10% on new licenses of a number of different applications. So get in touch with us if you need quoting on those particular applications. If you make that software purchase as part of a complete system or studio, then obviously there's opportunities for us to help you save more. You can go to our website for details on these specific promotions, or again, email me directly. There's my email address if you want more info pricing. Once again, the specials expire on October 18th. This webinar is really part of a two-part webinar, the first part of a two-part webinar. Dave will be saving information that will link from the 3D space into Smoke editing and finishing solution, and we'll be running a Smoke solutions webinar on 23rd of September. We'll email and let everyone know about that particular webinar, so you know and you can join in, but that's a note you should note down now and save the date and join us for that webinar as well. I'd like to introduce Dave, who's the 3D Specialist, Application Engineer, Media Entertainment for APAC for Autodesk Australia.
Okay. All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks, Mark. I just wanted to just before I get started, just say a very special thank you to Mark, because he's really worked hard to make this happen today. We've had a couple of technical issues, and Mark's sort of been on top of it and really worked very hard to make this happen. So special thanks, mate. Really appreciate it. Again, a special thanks to Digistore for making the space available and making this event happen today. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, let's get out of that. Okay, so first thing I wanted to talk about, so actually before I get started, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what we're going to go through today. So first thing we're going to deal with is 123D Catch. Then we're going to move over to Maya, and we're going to look at some of the retopologizing tools and sculpting tools in Maya. We're then going to move over to Mudbox. We're going to look at some more of the retopologizing tools and sculpting tools in Mudbox. And then finally, we're going to move over back over to Maya. and have a look at DirectX 11, the modeling toolset, grease pencil, some rigging, new rigging tools, and skinning tools. And as Mark said, one of the focuses I have today is really showing everything I'm showing you today has a direct input into smoke. So what I'm wanting to do is show that all this 3D data is actually being sent over to smoke, not as rendered files, but actually as 3D files. So to get started, what we've got here is 123D Catch open, and we've got Rob O'Neill actually up on the screen. So I took, get rid of that. So I took a series of photos of Rob a couple of weeks ago on my iPhone and stitched it together. So the process of doing this is you take about 40 photos, you try and make them overlap as much as possible, and you can take the photos on any digital camera, but you can also go onto the App Store and download 123D Catch as an app for your iPhone. And it basically, the great thing about doing that is it basically contains everything on your iPhone. So what you're seeing today with Rob here, this was all taken on my iPhone. So I took 40 photos of Rob. I uploaded it to the 123D Catch cloud servers where it compiled those photos, turned them into 3D data, and then sent it back to me. And that whole process took 20 minutes. And this is basically what I got. So in 20 minutes on my iPhone, I was handed back a 3D model of Rob. Now there's a couple of issues here that I wanted to talk about. The first thing is you can see all this white stuff behind him. It kind of looks like he's been hit by the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. What happened, the reason that's there is because I had Rob actually sitting right up against a wall. And so it was capturing that wall data behind him. So that was a bit of a mistake on my behalf. In the future, what I'd do if I wanted to get a better capture of someone is I'd have them in a room with maybe 1 meter or 2 meters of nothing behind them, so we wouldn't actually capture anything. If I just zoom out, you can see that it gives me a good representation in 3D space of where all the cameras were when I captured Rob. So that's basically showing me everywhere where I stood and took a photo of Rob. That's also represented down here in the timeline down here, which if I just run through each of the photos, you can see each of these photos here shows a various stage of where I was standing and taking a photo of Rob. If I just click on it, you can see that and just go through taking these photos. And it's very important when you're doing this that you overlap the photos as much as possible. And if I click on the cameras here, you can see the overlapping that happens. If we go here maybe, you can see if I go from that photo to this photo, you can see that they're pretty much overlapping almost 100%. All I'm doing is changing my position in 3D space, but I'm overlapping that photo at least 90% of that photo is being overlapped by that photo. And that's an important thing because that's kind of you need the more you overlap the photos, the easier it is for 123D Catch to stitch it all together. One thing I just want to also say about this is 123D Catch is free. So go get it. Go download it. If you've got an iPhone or iPad or whatever, go to the App Store, type in 123D Catch. It'll be there and you can download the app and start taking photos and turning your photos into 3D objects. The desktop app, which we're looking at right now, is also free, I'm pretty sure. And you actually need the desktop app for part of the process. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. So that's essentially what I got of Rob as a 3D model. Now, once my images were all compiled and turned into a 3D model, what I did is I emailed it to myself and then opened this file up in the desktop app and then simply saved it out as an FBX with with an FBX. And the reason I did that is because FBX allows us to embed the media, which meant that all the texture data, which was also captured while I was taking all the photos, which you can see here, is embedded in the 3D data as well with the file. So when I opened up any of my 3D files, I get my 3D data, but also get my texture data as well. So that's 123D Catch, and so we've got this image here. And the other thing, that the reason I didn't go into this and fix this up is because I gave this file, this FBX file, directly to Rob. Rob went and opened this up in Smoke without any manipulation, and was able to start lighting and doing his stuff in Smoke. So we basically wanted to show that the process without any sort of interference is as easy as we're saying. So from us taking the photos to this being in Smoke and Rob able to render stuff out in Smoke, the whole process took 30 minutes tops. And the big part of that was basically just waiting for the images to be compiled and turned into 3D data. So you'll see on the, I think it's the 23rd, is it, Mark? 23rd is Rob's. So you'll see when Rob does his webinar on the 23rd, he'll actually have this image, and you'll see all these imperfections in that we've got here, you'll see in Smoke. And we did that on purpose just to kind of emphasize the fact that you can basically get your 3D data into Smoke as simply by taking a series of photos. Okay, so let's have a look at Maya now. So, okay, so I've got Maya open, and you can see I've got all my imperfections. I've got my whole 3D file, exactly what we saw in 123D Catch. We've also got a little bit extra data here, so you can see I was able to capture, not on purpose, it kind of was just capturing extra stuff. You can see this is the hallway that Rob was sitting in, the floor. That's the wall behind him. That's a little bit of the wall. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. A little bit more of the floor. So you can see, it captured a whole heap of this extra stuff. It also, in my Maya file, you can see it's also brought in all my cameras as well. So if I just open up the outliner here, and I'll just select all the cameras so we can see them a little bit better. So if I just scale them up a little bit so we can see them, you can see it's given me all my camera data as well. So it's showing me everywhere, just like 123D Catch, showing me all the spots where I actually stood and took those photos. So what I wanted to talk about now is a bit of the process we need to go through to make this geo a little bit better and a little bit more production ready. So you can see we're getting, let's just, for now, forget about all the imperfections that are sitting behind Rob here, and let's focus a little bit on his face here. So you can see when we zoom in on Rob's face here, you can see we're getting quite a lot of bumpiness and stuff that's happening. That's just because of, you can see the amount of detail that we're actually capturing there. So one of the things we can do is we can go into the sculpt tools and actually use some of the sculpt features in Maya just to smooth that out. So if I select that and then just select the sculpt tools here, go in, where are we? There we are. And then what I'm going to do is, there's two tools in particular that we like to use doing this. So the first one is Relax, and the next one is Smooth. So I'm just going to go in and by changing my brush size and my brush strength, I can start painting and fixing up a lot of this geo issue that I've got here. Now, to change your brush size, just simply hold down B and then move your mouse to left or right. And you can see that increases the size of the brush. And to change the strength, you just simply hold down M and move the mouse to left or right, and that increases the strength of it. So I've got, what have I got? Relax selected, and then I'm just going to start moving around. You can see as I move around his face here how it's pushing those that geo around. And what it's doing is it's just sort of normalizing where a lot of those tries are sitting. And then if I just jump over to smooth, and I'll just increase the strength of that a little bit, and I'll just move through that. That's why you can see just getting that nice sort of smoothing out that's happening there. And then you can see that that's smoothed out his cheeks and whatnot there. So we'll just do a little bit more work on Rob's nose, give him a bit of a nose job, and then we might just move on. So again, with the sculpting tools here, you can see I've got what have I got? Smooth selected here, and I'm just going over, and you can see how just by using this process, it's just smoothing out those lines on his nose here. Okay. And in essence, that's basically a large part of the process of what we'd do to fix that up. So if I just click on that now, you can see that I've smoothed out Rob's nose, and we've kind of got, it's not looking too bad. So it'd basically go through that process, just refining the model, just fixing up any of those errors. You can see there's some areas where we can't fix that. We're going to have, by doing this, we're going to have to go and do some extra stuff. And some of those areas are like around the collar here. You can see that that's a bit of an issue. And what's happening there is basically I wasn't able to get behind Rob's collar here. So 123D Catch, when it was stitching it together, was a little bit confused. So we'd have to go in and adjust that manually. Another thing too, if we have a look at Rob's eyes here, you notice we're getting a little bit of blurring in the texture. Now this is happening. This has happened because some of the photos that I took, Rob must have had his eyes shut or he was looking in a different direction, and that's what's caused this little blur kind of line happening in the texture. So again, you know, if we wanted to take this all the way through to production, we'd have to probably cut out the eyes. We'd have to cut out the eyes anyway and put in our own geo, but we'd have to do a little bit extra work just to fix that up. I might just go into here because you can see we've got some issues this area here, and just finally I'm going to just go through this process again because I just want to emphasize how simple this is. Like, this is really a very simple process, and it really gives us, you know, really good results very quickly. So I'm just going through. You could just saw how bumpy his cheek area was and his forehead was, and his temple was. You can see by using this process I've basically moved and removed all that bump. There's still a little bit more. You can see all this sort of bumpiness here. If I went through that process again, I'd absolutely remove all of that. Okay, so that is part of the process that you go through when you're trying to fix up your 3D model that you've taken from 123D Catch. Again, the model that I gave to Rob and the model you'll see in Rob's webinar, I didn't do any of this. It's just raw data straight from, basically straight from the compiling, straight into Smoke. And you'll see how Rob was able to light it and animate it and put cameras in there and do all the stuff he needed to do, which was a massive time saver. It was just incredible. But I don't want to steal too much of his thunder. I'll save that. I highly recommend that you watch that on the 23rd, because it's quite fascinating to just see that how smooth that integration of 3D is with Maya and Smoke. And it's not just Maya. It's basically Smoke can really handle the FBX format very well. So if you're using 3D Studio Max, it can handle it just as easily. It can handle Mudbox files as well. And in fact, that's probably a good lead-in to the next thing I want to talk about, which is Mudbox. So let's just minimize that. I'll open up Mudbox now. It might take a second or two. Another thing too, in 2014, what we've done is anything new that's in anything in the ECS is colored green or has a little green emblem around it, and that's just to highlight the fact that it's a new feature. So it kind of helps you when you're going through the ECS in 2014 to see that, oh yeah, this is a new feature, and what does it do. So I know in the past, the only real indication is the forums and stuff like that. But this is a great way to allow you to explore all the software at your own leisure and at your own speed, and just find any of the new features and play around with it. So I'm going to open up this file here, and the file I'm about to open was captured using the same technique that I just talked about, but this was a bronze statue captured in Vietnam, I think. So you can see the amount of detail that's in this, just like Rob's image that we were just working with. We've got heaps and heaps of detail here. But one of the issues we've got is that this is still a triangulated mesh, not a polygon mesh. So we want to actually convert this to from a triangulated mesh to a polygon mesh. And we want to actually reduce the amount of detail. So let's just, for argument's sake, let's just say I want to turn this into a game's character or a game's ready asset. Right now this has obviously got way too much detail in it for that. But I can use this detail and save that out as a normal map, so I can put that on later. But I need to actually reduce my base polygon count. So the first thing I want to do is I want to check any mesh errors that I'm getting here. So there's certain errors that you'll get when you're doing 3D captures or 3D scans of objects. And fortunately, what we've done, the mesh error option was always there in Mudbox, but it was kind of hidden and a little bit part of the actual process. As you step through fixing up your mesh error would come up towards the end when you were trying to retopologize it, which was kind of a pain, because you'd go through all this work only to find after you've done all this work that, oh, hang on a sec, there's an error here, and you'd have to go back, fix it all up. And so what we've done is we've put this in as an actual button. So these are some of the errors. When I select that mesh error, these are some of the errors that I've got in this mesh right now, which will stop it from being converted to a polygon mesh. So I'm just going to say keep this mesh. And the great thing is, if I zoom out, it highlights all those errors in red. Now, I could go through and I could fix all of them, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do a bit of a cheat, and I'm going to sort of hedge my bets and bank on the next thing that I'm going to do, which is go mesh reduce. I'm banking on the mesh reduce allowing me to knock out a lot of these errors, and sometimes it does. Sometimes it knocks out all the errors for you. So let's see what we get. So I'm just going to select the object and then go to mesh and then go to reduce mesh, and I'm going to reduce the mesh So yeah, maybe, yeah, actually I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to reduce the mesh by 99%. So it's going to knock it down to 74, just over 7,400 polys. So if I put this at 1, let's see what it, so it's basically going to, so if I reduce this down to just by 1%, I've got, what's that, 7,41350, so a ton. There's a heap of polys there. So let's do that. So let's knock it down by 99%. May take a minute or so, so just bear with me. Let's see what we get. So you can see down here in the bottom left, it's going through the process. And there you go. It's knocked that mesh down to about 7,000 polys. You can see it has quite, it has really, yeah, really kind of destroyed a lot of the detail. But that's not a bad thing. Remember what I was saying earlier, we can actually save out that detail as a normal map. So this is a good thing. This is good that we've been able to knock out all this. So don't be too concerned that the mesh looks destroyed here, because what we can do is put all the detail back on as a normal map. So what I need to do now is just check that I don't have any more mesh errors on here. So I just need to turn that off, go back in, turn that back on. And so it's telling me that I've got an error somewhere. And it looks like, okay, so it looks like I've only, so you remember all the errors I had before? It was probably about 10 errors. I've managed to knock that down to there only being 1 error left. So what I'm going to do now is just go in and actually just delete these polys here. So select faces, select my brush size like so, and then I'm just going to draw around here and delete these polys. Okay, so it's a little bit of a fiddly job doing this, sort of getting in here and making sure you get all of them. So just bear with me. I think I've got it. Yep, so there we go. So that's all of that. I might get rid of that one, and I might get rid of that one as well. Okay, so what I've done is I've created a hole in my geometry. Now, in the past, I've done a very bad thing. I've done something you absolutely would not want to do, and in essence, destroyed my mesh. With 2014, we've actually got the ability now to patch up holes in the mesh and add new UVs to those patched areas. So all I need to do that is simply just select the edge. So I've now selected all the edges around that hole, go up to my mesh, go down to patch, and you can see now it's just dropped in tries into that hole. So I've patched up that hole. Now the last thing I need to do is just go create UVs and create UVs for the missing area. And you can see now that it's dropped the UVs in there. And that's basically it. So let's just see. I'll just select this again, and we'll go to my mesh error thing and just see if I've got any mesh errors. So turn that off, turn that back on. So it's just told me my selected mesh is valid, so I've got no more errors in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply go in. I could do a few more things here, but just had a look at the clock and we're starting to run out of time. So what I'm going to do now is just retopologize this mesh. So just going to go to mesh, retopologize, new operation, and I am going to leave this as is and just hit retopologize. Again, this might take a few minutes. Just keep an eye on the bottom left. This is a taskbar, just sort of telling you its expression. So we're at about 31% right now, slowly ticking over. Yeah, it takes about a minute or so to do this. About 45% now, so 57, and it tends to jump up when it gets over halfway. So 72%, we're almost there. And there we go. So I've now turned my triangulated mesh into a quad mesh, and I did have that set a little bit too high. I was actually thinking about when I hit the button, I had that set a little bit too high, which is why it took a little bit longer than I was expecting it to, and why it's actually added a little bit more data than I was hoping it would. But I've basically got this mesh which is now ready to, well, maybe there's too many polys on there to put into a game engine, but it's definitely a polygon mesh now, and I can use my normal map that I would have saved out earlier to put all that data, all that extra data back on there. So I haven't lost any of that fine detail that was on the mesh from before. Okay, so yeah, so I'm going to jump out of that now, and we're actually going to go back to Maya. I'm actually going to shut down Max because I'm running about 3D programs on this computer right now, and I just don't want to push it. So let's go back to Maya, and let's open up one of the files I was working with before. So I've got this file here, and you may have seen me working with this in previous presentations, but there's some great stuff in here that I just really want to talk about that I don't think has been talked about enough. The first thing is a DirectX 11 shader and DirectX 11 viewport. So right now you're actually viewing in the viewport through DirectX 11. What we're hoping will be basically your final render. So we're trying to, with DirectX 11, trying to give you a very close what's going on here? A very close representation of what the final render will be. And in the viewport right now, we've got displacement maps going on, we've got depth of field, we've got ambient occlusion, we've got anti-aliasing, we've got motion blur. All that stuff is happening in the viewport as we speak. What I'll do is I'll turn the depth of field on and off. That's ambient occlusion there. Hopefully you can see it through the webinar. Hopefully your resolution is high enough that you can see that. But that's the depth of field turned off. And then I'm going to click this button up here, and I'll give it a couple of seconds to refresh. And that's the depth of field turned back on. So we've also got anti-aliasing as well. You can see around the edges of his arm here, we've got the anti-aliasing turned off right now. If I turn that back on, you can see it just smooths it out. And if I zoom out a little bit, we can see the ambient occlusion of the shadows and all that sort of stuff going on. So that's it turned off, and that's it turned on. So it just sort of gives you that nice extra depth in the shadows. The next thing I want to look at is the DirectX 11 shader, which is actually on this guy right now. And this is the Uber shader, which basically has everything on there. And just go through, and I'm just scrubbing down on this side here just so you can see everything that's in the shader. So we've got light binding that's happening here, all our lights in our scene are actually in the shader. We've got our diffuse, which is standard for the colors and all that sort of stuff. But what I really want to talk about is, I'll zoom in just to emphasize the point here, is the first thing in the viewport, we've got our skin translucency going on here. So you can see on the little boils and bumps, we've got this skin translucency, and on the ears as well, we've got skin translucency. So this is happening in the shader in the viewport. So that's being driven by, let's see if I can find it. It's displacement. So there's our translucency down here, and that's basically being driven by this image here, which is basically just a grayscaled image. I'm going to scrub up to our displacement, and I just want to talk about vector displacement maps. I really love vector displacement maps. They're a great tool in Mudbox to get really interesting and dynamic sort of displacement. And what's great about a vector displacement map is you can actually save them out as stencils, and then you can use them to basically paint over your mesh in Mudbox, and it'll build out your vector displacement map. Why that's good is, let's just say I'm making a character and I make a ear, and I'm really happy with the ear, and I really hate modeling ears, which I do. I find them quite a tedious thing to do, easy thing to muck up, a hard thing to get right. So once I get one of the ears right in my modeling, what I want to do is save that out as a vector displacement map, and then bring that in for any future character that I'm modeling, place it on the side of the head as a stencil, and then stencil over that character with the vector displacement map. And it basically builds out the ear. So what I'm saying is that unlike a normal displacement map, it actually gives me the ability to cut into the model, like behind the ear. And I can prove what I'm talking about here, or emphasize what I'm talking about here, by if we look at his belly, and I just ramp up the vector displacement on the displacement map here, you can see how I'm actually getting more of an overhang of his belly. And this is what I'm talking about. So I can do that when I'm modeling a character. I can basically paint out, anyone that's familiar with using Mudbox and the stencils, I can basically very quickly paint out the stencil, and I've got the ear with all the back of the ear done for me. So I don't have to go through that tedious process every time. So yeah, so that's a vector displacement map. So the next thing we want to talk about is the modeling toolset. So anyone that's familiar with any of the older versions of Maya and has done quite a bit of modeling might be familiar with the Next modeling toolset. So Autodesk bought that and has integrated that into Maya 2014, and it actually sits here in the top taskbar. And like I was saying earlier, anything new is color-coded by green, and you can see that it's got the color coding here. It's green. And I'm just going to turn that on. So I've now turned on the modeling toolset, and there's heaps of good stuff here. But one of the things I want to talk about is the ability to retopologize using this. So just going to make sure, object mode, make sure that guy's selected, and select that there. So I'm going to turn on quad draw here, and then what I'm going to do is go in, and I'm just going to basically drop down points on his arm, and it is actually adhering to the volume of that geometry there and dropping those points on there. So anyone that's familiar with NURBS modeling, you might think, oh yeah, this is kind of like NURBS modeling. But unlike NURBS modeling, where you've got to be very specific about where you place your points, you can see I'm just placing these at any time, in any order. Like there's no real rhyme or reason to how I'm placing these, just whatever takes my fancy. And then to build that out, to actually turn those points into actual geo, all I need to do is move my cursor in between 4 points and hold down Shift and then click, and you can see it actually creates the polygons in between those 4 points, or four of those points. If I just make a mistake like that, I can just undo that and then just go through and do that again. And you can see that it's giving me these little green dotted lines. That's saying that it's allowing me to add more detail, like more lines through there. So if I go, yeah, actually, you know what, I need more detail there, I can just click in there, and you can see it's subdivided that. So I'm going to click there and subdivide it along that whole edge along there. And you can see just by doing this, I can very, very quickly retopologize this mesh and just go through that process, and I can retopologize that extremely quickly. So let's just you can see there I've got that mesh there. Okay, so get rid of that. Next thing I want to show you. What's the next thing? All right, let's have a look at some of the new rigging tools and skinning tools. So again, you saw how I was able to use the volume of the mesh to retopologize that. I can also use the volume of the mesh to skin this as well, and drop in my to rig this character. Excuse me. So I've got the mesh here. I'm in my perspective view. Now, ordinarily, I would never start rigging, or I'd never start dropping in my skeleton while in the perspective view. But if I select my snap to volume or projected center, make sure that's selected, and then just select my bones here, and then just move inside this mesh here. So I've just dropped in the upper arm bone. Now I'm just dropping in the forearm bone and building down to the thumb. Now ordinarily in a perspective viewport, that would look all right until I started to move it, and then those bones would be shot off into infinity. That'd just be a disaster. There's no way I could work with that. With this selected, you notice that when I move around, those bones are now dead center in the mass of this geometry. And you can see how quickly I did that. So with that selected, I'm just going to select this here, and I'm just going to parent to make a collarbone very quickly. Now what I'm going to do is just select the bone and then just select the geo, go up to my skin and then go to smooth binding, select the drop down for smooth binding, and as you can see I've already done this, so all my settings are set for heat map skinning and dual Quaternion and all the other stuff. Now you can play around with all of that to get better results. I just hit apply, and there's my character skinned. So if I just select this bone here and just rotate that, so the thing I love about heat map skinning is it basically gets you 90 depending on how much time you spend on your bone placements and all that sort of stuff, you know, somewhere between 90–95% there. You can see this area here, notoriously bad and problematic area around the hips. You can see it's really done a good job of setting the weights for that, and the deformation around there is really good. So you saw how quickly it was for me to set up the bone for the arm. Oh, and one thing I forgot to do in my excitement to show you that feature is I forgot to actually turn on the mirroring tool. So if I'd turned on the mirroring tool while I was making the arm bone on the left arm here, it would have actually made the arm bone on the right arm as well. So I would have halved my workload by turning the mirroring tool on. But I didn't, so yeah, maybe next time. And it's very easy to do. If I just, I think, double click on there, where is it? I think symmetry, yeah, and I just pick which axis I want it to be on, and that's it. That's how it mirrors. Okay, so let's hide that. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes. So last thing I want to talk about is grease pencil. The reason I want to talk about grease pencil is because I think it's a fantastic tool. It's a fantastic communication tool, and that's something that doesn't really get a lot of fanfare when we're talking about features. But in production, it's probably one of the most important things to get a production right. If you have poor communication, I've seen this time and time again, poor communication is a recipe for disaster. Grease pencil is a great tool to better the communication between artists, between directors, between the artist and the director and the artist. And what I mean by that is, let's just say I've got this character walking along. I'll just get rid of the bones to make it a little less confusing. So I just got this character walking along here, and let's just say at frame, where's his foot hit? Frame 21, his foot hits here. And this is a camera view that I've got. So let's just say I'm the director and an animator has given me this scene. And I look at this scene and I go, okay, yeah, that's all right, but I actually want this foot to be closer. I don't like this stance. I think he needs to have more of a cowboy stance. So, you know, whatever my reasoning, I don't like the foot there. The way I would normally communicate that to an animator is I'd write notes and I'd say, move foot closer to muffler. Now, depending on how good my notes are, depends on how good the animator will fix that to my liking. So if I give really vague notes of foot needs to be closer to muffler, that doesn't tell the animator which foot. It doesn't tell the animator how close. It doesn't give him anything really. But I've seen those kind of notes more times than I care to remember. So with grease pencil, I can actually draw on the screen, and I can say that at this frame, I want the foot to be directly here. And I can write here. Now I'm actually doing this with a mouse. If you were doing this in production, you'd use a tablet. So I won't continue with that because it's just quite painful with the mouse. But you can see here, I've drawn out and I've said basically place foot here. So the animator knows exactly that I want the foot here. Now I can actually say, I can draw a circle around that and then go that foot here. So there is absolutely no confusion now. The animator will see this and knows, okay, the director wants this foot to be placed here. So I can scrub along here, and you can see that that note is still there. It's not a big deal. Let's just say I'm at this frame here, and I don't like the arm in this position. I just create a new layer in Grease Pencil, and let's just change the color as well, just so we can say arms are green. And I can draw out and say, I want the arm to be more like so. So you can see here, I'm very quickly going through a scene, and yep, I don't like that one either. So I'm going to draw out his arm in more of a position, more like so. You can see here I'm giving direct feedback to the artist. I'm saying this is exactly what I want. So using this tool, you can actually, it's a two-way street of communication. So as an animator, when I'm blocking out a scene, before I commit to doing a whole heap of blocking out, and anyone that's done a lot of animation will know what I'm talking about here, I can actually get my scene, get my camera, and I could draw out all my blocking out and then give that to the director and say, what do you think? Here's my blocking out shots of the character at frame here. Let me just, so if you imagine that the character is not here, let's go to, what color? Yellow. Okay, so imagine the character's not here. I've just gone, all right, my character is sort of like this. I want a line of action like so. He's going to walk down like this. So I've just blocked that out very quickly, and then I could go to, in fact, I'm gonna hide this just to emphasize the point. Okay. Oh. Get rid of that. Okay, so I've gone there, and then let's go here, and I've got at frame 13, I've got him there. At frame 19, I want him to be, whoops, don't want to do that. Draw a new one. At frame 19, I want him to be here, but I actually want his weight to be opposite. I kind of want him to be up on, so he was standing on his left foot. This time I want him to be standing on his right foot. No, I've actually mucked that up. But if I muck that up, not a big deal. I can just go and erase that out, and then go back and draw that out. You can see that I can start to get a good feel of this. So that's not working. I'm running out of time to really muck around with this, but there's something not working with that. But as far as the character pose, there's something not working. But you can see I'm getting that information by just drawing on the screen without me committing to moving the character around and all that sort of stuff. I'm getting an idea of, yeah, there's something wrong with the hips and the weight and the shoulders and the spine, and yeah, something not right there. So by doing this, you can see I'm getting a good idea of this is how far the character's moving over that many frames. I can see the transition where the weight's shifting, all that sort of stuff. So I can, as an artist, give this to my director and say, what do you think? And they can go, yep, that's cool, go with it. So you can see how this is a fantastic tool for communication, both for artists and directors. So we've pretty much, I think we've got about 5 minutes. So I think with that I might finish up. I just want to say thank you so much for watching today. Again, very big thank you to Mark for all his hard work today. And I'll just hand you over to Mark. I think he wants to say a few final words. Thanks again, guys. Bye.
Thanks, David. That was fantastic. The last thing I wanted to do was just to put up that slide once more. I didn't want to launch Outlook at all. I just wanted to go back to the PowerPoint. Sorry. And just to give you my contact details. So note that down on the slide. If you have any other questions after the webinar and you'd like to communicate with us, then by all means send the email directly to me or phone me directly. That's my contact details. Once again, follow our Facebook page and Twitter account or check out our website. Look out for an email letting you know about the follow-up smoke webinar on the 23rd. And we ran out of time to get at any other questions from people putting stuff in, but we will absolutely get back to those shortly and let people know, get back to those questions and respond to those directly. So thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward to you joining us at another webinar in the future. Thanks very much.